we try to discount it blind, we just do it more frequent. I grew up myself in a DIY retail store, and there's another really relevant factor in this regarding seasonality.
Products who are performing quite good, but that's also due to us maybe being too cheap. Hello everyone, welcome to this short webinar. My name is Thomas and I'm with Niklas today. I'm the Sales and Commercial Manager for the DACH market here at PriceShape.
And I work for the UK and the Irish market.
And maybe just a short introduction to PriceShape at first. We are a Danish-based company founded in 2018. We serve roughly 800 clients in more than 30 countries. And what we do is that we basically collect data regarding your competitors on their stock status and their prices, and collect all that data so that we give you the foundation to do just the right decision, basically. And that's not only regarding setting the right price at the right time, the classic repricing, but in multiple aspects of your business. Talking about purchase department and marketing, and then of course the classic repricing.
And we'll be diving into different topics. We'll be diving into your assortment, warehouse management, how can you manage your stock situation, how can you use price as a factor in making sure that you manage your warehouse correctly, how can you identify bestsellers, how we'll dive into the 80-20 rule, so 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your assortment, is something we hear quite often. In some instances, it's even worse than that. But we'll dive into both how can you look at this in your current assortment, but also how can you potentially define additional bestsellers, maybe even additional bestsellers that you don't even sell right now.
Exactly. And one of the things we hear a lot and see a lot is that I don't think it's any secret that the e-commerce space in general has been increasingly competitive, especially since Corona, where we have a lot of different shops basically opening up every day, and that results in a more and more competitive landscape. And the first challenge that we want to dive into is the challenge about how you can manage your warehouse once you have this increasing competitive landscape.
Yeah, and there are many factors going into this. It's becoming more and more available with AI out there to create stores, to sell more and more products. It's easy to create a website with 10,000 products without even committing to a warehouse in the first place. But for the retailers who has, there are multiple approaches. And of course, this creates multiple issues as well. I'll be diving into I grew up myself in a DIY retail store in the middle of nowhere in Denmark, where we had around 50 employees back then. And basically the way we approached stock in general was that, of course, we had these counts to ensure that the products we thought were in stock was actually in stock. And then if some products had collected enough dust, what we would do is we would basically put them into a big room. We would tell people that were coming by the store, maybe even put it out in a newsletter written back then, but tell them about the discounts we had. And then people would come and find oftentimes some products discount up to 80%, 90%, because they had collected so much dust. And obviously this exercise is very expensive. This was done very infrequent as well, so only a few times a year. That can cause some problems.
And we actually see this old-fashioned way of managing stock still being relevant, or done at least, by a lot of the companies that we're talking to. And that has, as you mentioned, some very, very expensive drawbacks. Because first of all, you might up selling your products way cheaper than actually necessary. And then you also end up having a lot of liquidity bound in your warehouse. And if you only visit that every 6 months, then you can't use that potential liquidity to do other sales enhancing activities. So there's a lot of monetary challenges connected to this.
And it's also very tied to subjective feeling that if we go around the warehouse, we collect the goods that we think collected a lot of dust, but potentially if we did a small decrease to some of these products, they would actually start catching up. So of course, discounting and blind can be very expensive in this case.
Exactly. One of the ways, of course, to mitigate that issue, or at least to do it a bit more than what we also see as a solution in some companies, is to start to revisit the warehouse more frequently, look at your own performance data, meaning sales data and stock levels and so on, to identify trends and try to react more often to that based on what you have yourself in your data set. But there's also some limitations to that.
And of course, what happens in many of these cases is that we maybe even create an outlet store where if the products are a small problem, they have maybe 20% discount added to them. If we believe they're a big problem, maybe they're 80% discounted. But we're back to the same problem. We try to discount in blinds, we just do it more frequent.
Exactly. And where we see the absolutely best results is that once you start to combine your own performance trends with the market trends to identify how much do I need to discount my big problems and how much do I need to discount my small problems, then we have the perfect mix of actually selling the product at the right price, because sometimes you don't need to be the cheapest to get rid of some of your small problems. You can discount them to, let's say, 15% if that is what the market says is the right price. And you might also need to discount a product with 57%, for instance, or whatever it could be. But what we at least know is that if you look at the market and look at your competitors' prices, then you have a way better foundation to have the right price, to make the right discount.
And there's another really relevant factor in this regarding seasonality, because maybe you don't see the problems, the products as very big, but if you only have 3 to 6 months to sell the products every year, potentially you need to discount fast. And if the products that you think 15%, 20%, if you're discounting in blind, maybe you're hitting the wrong target. Maybe you need to go fast, earn a little bit less to save the money in the long run, to free up the cash, to make sure that you can spend the money on sales increasing activities instead of having them tied in the warehouse in the first place.
Exactly. We actually also sometimes see the other side of the medal, where we might have products who are performing quite good, but that's also due to us maybe being too cheap, and it's still relevant products. So maybe we should actually increase the price in those products to ensure that we not run out of stock too early and end up in a situation where we have people who want to buy from us, but we don't have any more stock to supply our customers. So it's two sides basically, and what's the important thing is to not just guess the price, but to be smart about it, to use your own data and the market data.
And from a tool perspective, to put this into sort of how we would do this in real life, imagine you would sign up for an account in PriceShape. What we would have is your competitors' prices, so you would immediately have the market inputs from there. Then you can implement your performance data, you can implement your stock situation, and you can then create these groups. So typically we can create groups based on severity or how big the problems are. So we can say that potentially some products are small, slow movers. Maybe that's products where we have stock for 4 to 8 months, for example. They're a small problem. Maybe we decrease the requirement for margin on those a little bit. Maybe the problem becomes a little bit bigger once we exceed 8 months. Now we're 8 to 12 months. That will be the slow movers. That's, of course, a little bit of a bigger problem. We go further down in margin. Once we exceed having more than a year worth of stock, potentially we even go below market prices, and we maybe even accept to lose a little bit of money on these problems to make sure that we free up the money immediately. So you're able to easily group these things as well in our tool.
Exactly. And that is information and decisions that, of course, if you were to do it at manual, is first of all difficult to get, but also extremely time consuming. So to automate that doesn't just allow you to have the right price at the right time, it also frees up a lot of time to do more, let's say, fun tasks at your business. But I also think this actually ties quite well into our next topic, which is the formerly known 80-20 rule that you probably know. It's a classic one where we say that 80% of the revenue is created by 20% of the products. what we actually see in real life business is this very often is it fewer than 20% of the product that serves for a large part of the revenue. I actually had a good case with another company who had a mug, one mug, who was serving, I think that mug alone was roughly 3.5-4% of the total revenue from one mug.
And they had more than 40 products.
They had more than 40 products.
That's a good example. And what happens with these bestsellers is that once you start grouping your products based on performance, you can find out if potentially you can make more money on the mug. Potentially you can see if you can increase the price a little bit and keep a similar amount of sales. But in some instances, if you're close to being the cheapest in the market, you can also play around with potentially decreasing it a little bit, and then what you think is a lot of sales could potentially even double or triple in some instances. So that's definitely something you can very easily do.
And also an interesting thing to think about is what would happen if we were able, with our current assortment, to find more bestsellers. Maybe we have some products in between that there is a big demand for, but we just don't know about it yet because we haven't found the right position in the market. So imagine if we were able to create dynamic rules, dynamic groups that were testing out different sort of products to try to see once we then find the right price point, then that might actually turn into a new potential bestseller. And we don't need to have a lot of new bestsellers for us to have a extremely good business case.
So in these cases, you can try to look for characteristics in your current bestsellers, see if you have products that are similar. Potentially, what we also do is we oftentimes directly implement these things into our marketing setups like Google, like meta ads and stuff like that, to ensure that if we want to test out a product that we weren't competitive on before, you can immediately tell your different ad channels to act as if this was a bestseller, to see if you get outputs, and you very quickly be able to see feedback from the market. And let's imagine if you can increase your amount of bestsellers with 20%, 30%, 40%, what kind of impact this would have on your business.
It's not just about finding new potential bestsellers. It's also very, very important that you keep momentum on your current bestsellers, because the market is dynamic. We have this huge competitiveness in the market, which means that the prices change every day. So it's so important that you keep a close eye on your current bestseller and always make sure that you have the right price point. And the price point you had last week might not be sufficient next week to keep these products as your bestsellers.
And let's say a situation comes where the products you sold for a long time, the very popular products, all of a sudden you're not competitive anymore. You don't have the cost prices to be able to compete with the market. Maybe there's been overstock in the market. That happened in many industries during COVID, for example. So what's important is that if you have a way of recreating bestsellers by using similar characteristics in your current assortment, you can all of a sudden start looking for new products as well.
Exactly. I think what we basically try to encapsulate here and express is that once you start to combine the market data, your competitors' behavior, with your own performance data and how your business is founded, then you have the possibility to identify massive opportunities, whether that is regarding your current bestsellers, minimizing problems in your stock, but also tying into advocating the right products, buying the right product, maybe even buying new bestsellers.
Definitely. And actually, one of the things that we're doing here at PriceShape is that we're actually scraping 250 million product pages per day. That means that we have a huge database. We're also visiting various bestseller sites, bestseller lists across Europe and across the world to find out which products are popular for the future. That means all of a sudden we're able to give you a full overview. If you know the characteristic of your products, you can look for similar brands. You can do this directly in our platform to see of the products we don't know of today, what would the competitive situation be? Would you be looking for the same competitors as the ones you know? Is there another business vertical that you want to look into? And then once you deep dive in on the products that you want to investigate, you can basically contact the supplier. You can get a sheet with the potential cost prices that you can get. And then before you make the purchase and you take them into your stock, you can check them in the tool to find out, would we even be able to make money on the products? Would it even be a good idea to buy these products? Maybe they're popular, but maybe we lose money before we even buy them. So in this way, if you have a model to create new bestsellers in the store, we all of a sudden also have a way of ensuring that you get more bestsellers.
So basically, if you want to know or want to have an idea of where you might have opportunities or where your problems might be, feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to set up an account, show you where exactly you could benefit from this market data to enhance your both current business setup, but also identify new possibilities, basically.
And in reality, we would always encourage you to do a health check every now and then on your assortment to find out, do I have the right prices at the moment? Should I even sell these products? Should I find some other products to sell? How is my business doing in general? And oftentimes you can really quickly see if there's a good business case for you, or if you should look elsewhere for a good business case.
Exactly.